It was around 1:30 a.m. My husband had been gone for weeks on another one of his endless work trips. The distance between us wasn't just physical anymore, it had grown cold emotionally too. We hardly spoke unless it was about bills or schedules. I felt more like a roommate than a wife, lonely, unseen, and quietly resentful. That night, I fell asleep in one of his old t-shirts, curled up on the far side of our bed. I remember the soft knock, or maybe it was the creak of the door. I thought it was the wind or one of the cats, but then I heard it again. It was Ethan, my 20-year-old stepson, home for summer break. I sat up, startled. "Hey, sorry," he said softly. "I couldn't sleep. I just needed to talk to someone." I nodded, groggy but concerned. "Is everything okay?" He sat at the edge of the bed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in him since he was a teenager. He spoke about feeling lost at college, about how his dad had never really been emotionally there for him. I listened, maybe too closely, maybe because I needed someone to talk to too. Our hands brushed, then lingered. I wish I could say I stopped it right there. I wish I could say I remembered every consequence. But I didn't. What happened next was not premeditated. It came from that aching human place where comfort, neglect, and broken boundaries meet. It wasn't rough. It wasn't sordid. It was quiet, gentle, and deeply, deeply wrong. The next morning, I couldn't look at myself, and Ethan left before breakfast, not saying a word. I kept the secret for 6 months, even as my husband returned, and life tried to snap back to normal. But everything had shifted. My guilt became a shadow that followed me everywhere. Eventually, Ethan confessed to a friend. That friend told someone else. It spiraled. My marriage ended, not just because of what I did, but because of everything that had been neglected before it ever happened. Ethan and I never spoke again after the fallout. His mother took him back in, and I heard he dropped out of college soon after. Emotional vulnerability is one of the most fragile yet powerful states a person can experience in a relationship. When emotional needs go unmet for prolonged periods, a person becomes susceptible to seeking connection elsewhere, even if that connection crosses lines that were once clearly defined. In the context of family dynamics, especially blended families, the proximity of relationships combined with emotional neglect can create the perfect storm for boundary confusion. A spouse who feels ignored, undervalued, or emotionally distant from their partner may begin to unconsciously gravitate toward anyone who provides warmth, understanding, or attention. Often this shift begins subtle as shared conversations, lingering eye contact, a sympathetic touch. But when someone is emotionally starved, these small gestures can take on outsized significance. When one's emotional void is filled by someone within the household, such as a stepchild, the situation becomes even more complex. Stepfamily relationships already walk a delicate line. They are intimate by proximity, but not always by emotional structure. Stepparents and stepchildren are often expected to form close familial bonds quickly, yet they may not have the shared history or natural connection that biological families rely on. This pressure to forge a bond can sometimes manifest as forced closeness or inappropriate intimacy, particularly when both individuals are dealing with unresolved emotional issues. A lonely stepparent may begin to see their stepchild not just as a family member, but as a sympathetic ear, someone who understands the dysfunction or coldness within the household. The stepchild, especially if they are older or emotionally mature for their age, might feel flattered, responsible, or emotionally aligned with that stepparent. These moments of connection, though rooted in pain or longing, can easily blur into something inappropriate if neither party is anchored by strong emotional or ethical boundaries. It's important to understand that most emotional affairs or inappropriate bonds don't begin with physical desire. They begin with emotional intimacy that was missing elsewhere. For someone who is vulnerable, validation from an unexpected source, someone inside the home who listens, cares, and sees them, can become intoxicating. The familiarity of domestic life creates a false sense of safety and trust, making it easier for both people to justify the growing attachment until a line is crossed. The bedroom, the late-night conversation, the accidental touch each becomes a symbol of what they are not getting in their actual relationship. Our culture often underestimates the role emotional neglect plays in infidelity. We are quick to judge the physical act, but slower to recognize the cumulative emotional damage that precedes it. People assume that someone cheats because they want more sex or excitement, but often it's because they want to be seen, heard, and valued. They want a mirror to their pain, someone who notices them, someone who listens. When emotional needs are chronically unmet, the rational mind begins to justify behaviors that once felt unthinkable. Emotional vulnerability doesn't just blur the lines, it distorts them entirely, turning gestures of care into invitations, and shared pain into intimacy. In families where traditional boundaries are already complicated, like stepfamilies, households with large age gaps, or relationships where roles shift over time, this blurring becomes even more dangerous. What should be a source of support can mutate into a source of betrayal. The emotional pull can feel more powerful than logic, more urgent than loyalty. In this distorted emotional landscape, people often tell themselves it's not wrong because they're hurting, or because it just happened, or because they needed each other. But the emotional vulnerability that sparked the connection doesn't erase the damage caused by stepping over lines that should have remained sacred. Secrets have a powerful and often destructive force in any relationship, especially when they involve infidelity. The act of hiding something deeply painful or morally conflicting creates a heavy emotional burden that gradually seeps into every aspect of a person's life. In relationships where infidelity is involved, secrecy becomes an emotional landmine, unstable and unpredictable, waiting to explode and wreak havoc on trust, communication, and the fabric of family itself. The initial decision to conceal the betrayal often stems from fear of judgment, fear of losing the relationship, or fear of the overwhelming consequences. But keeping such secrets does not isolate the act to a single moment. Instead, it spreads its toxic roots throughout the relationship, growing silently and insidiously beneath the surface. As the secret lives on, it generates layers of guilt and shame that often become unbearable. The person who is unfaithful might live in a constant state of anxiety, fearful of being discovered at any moment. This fear can cause them to become emotionally distant or defensive, creating a paradox where their efforts to protect the secret actually drive a wedge further between them and their partner. Meanwhile, the betrayed partner senses something is wrong, but without concrete proof, they may spiral into confusion, suspicion, and self-doubt. This unspoken tension creates an emotional void filled with mistrust, resentment, and sometimes paranoia. The secret, therefore, doesn't remain hidden. It manifests as invisible cracks in the relationship, slowly undermining its foundation. Secrets in infidelity don't just affect the couple, they ripple outward, affecting family members, especially in blended families or households where multiple generations live under one roof. The complexity increases when the secret involves someone within the family unit, such as a stepson or stepdaughter. Suddenly, the betrayal is not just between partners, but implicates family loyalty, trust, and roles. The secret creates a divide, forcing family members to pick sides or live in an uneasy silence. The presence of the secret divides relationships into those who know, those who suspect, and those who are completely unaware, creating fractured dynamics and isolating individuals emotionally. Keeping a secret about infidelity often means maintaining a web of lies or omissions. Each lie begets another, creating a fragile facade that requires constant vigilance. The unfaithful partner might fabricate stories, alter routines, or avoid certain conversations, all to keep the truth buried. This constant effort is exhausting and mentally draining. It diverts emotional energy away from nurturing the relationship, leading to emotional exhaustion and burnout. The original intimacy and openness that could have fostered healing instead give way to defensiveness and evasion. The emotional landmine effect of secrets is particularly devastating because it also distorts the betrayed partner's perception of reality. Without knowledge of the truth, they might blame themselves for the distance or coldness they feel in the relationship, internalizing the fault. They might question their worth, attractiveness, or adequacy as a partner. This psychological toll can cause long-term emotional damage, affecting self-esteem and future relationships. The secret, while hidden, exerts a toxic influence on the betrayed partner's sense of self and emotional health. The revelation of the secret is rarely neat or simple. When the truth finally comes out, whether through confession, accident, or discovery, it often triggers intense emotional upheaval, shock, anger, grief, and betrayal. The relationship faces a critical turning point. The emotional landmine that was hidden for so long detonates with full force, and the aftermath can feel catastrophic. Even when couples decide to stay together, the process of rebuilding trust is painful and fraught with setbacks. For families, especially those involving children or stepchildren, the fallout can fracture the household, lead to estrangement, or create long-lasting wounds that affect generations. In essence, secrets about infidelity don't merely conceal a moment of weakness or mistake. They create an ongoing emotional hazard. This hazard damages not only the trust between partners, but also the emotional safety of the entire family. The effort to protect a secret becomes the very thing that destroys what it intended to save, turning a hidden truth into a volatile, emotional landmine waiting to explode.